Hey, tolerators. This is To All the Men I've Tolerated Before with Natalie. It's the show where my guest and I chat about some of the things we were conditioned to feel about ourselves, relationships, and the world around us. Today's guest is one of Team Tolerator's first supporters and someone I have dreamed about sitting down and chatting with before I even thought I could pull off a podcast. Delanie Fischer is one of the hilarious hosts of Self-Helpless and also hosts her own solo podcast, E-Ficionado, where she takes everything she's learned as an entrepreneur and business owner and shares it with listeners to help them make their business dreams come true, but on their terms. Delanie, I have an important question before we start on the actual topic.
That was so nice, by the way. Thank you so much. That was such a lovely introduction. I'm so excited to be here.
How is it that I was not aware that you and I have such a big passion for Tenacious D?
Oh my gosh. I don't know how that wasn't number one thing we talked about.
I don't understand how I missed that on your website, because I was looking at the things that you sent over for a bio, and I was like, yeah, Jack Black formed my childhood.
Oh yeah. I mean, he is my celebrity crush and has been since I was like 12. And people are always like really like confused by that. And like, I don't understand how that's confusing. He is the funniest, sexiest man alive. Besides my husband, of course. Right. But my husband knows that if Jack Black were to, be available and ask me out, he would have to let me go.
See, funny is sexy. And that's always like my downfall. Yes. I'm like, ooh, can you make me laugh twice in 3 minutes? Then
we're good.
Then we're good.
Sign me up.
But unfortunately, we're not going to talk about the funny men that we love in our lives. We're going to talk about minimalism.
Yeah. Ooh, okay.
I'm pretty sure that the tolerators have found out either through my social media or stories I've told here that I don't live a very minimalistic lifestyle. Wasn't sure I could even say the word out loud. I'm like, when's the last time I said that word? And then I was listening to the Self-Helpless episode about minimalism, and I was like, oh my gosh, that was episode 3.
Oh my God, that was so long ago.
It was in 2017, and I didn't find your podcast until the shelter in place. You 3 kept me company while I lived here by myself and was unable to see other people. And so I was wondering if in these 5-ish years, you've kind of honed your own definition of what it means to be minimalistic.
Totally. Oh, what a great question. To me, and that's really important, is that everybody's definition of minimalism is probably going to be very different, and it's going to look very different. Mm-hmm. Mine is simply removing shit I don't like so I can focus on what's important. That's really it. Removing things I don't want or I don't need so I can have as much fun and experience as much joy as possible. So that's it. And that's going to be looking very different throughout, every phase of my life. But I'm super curious to know, Natalie, if you don't mind answering this, is what have your ideas of minimalism been? And I think when we also talked about this episode, you consider yourself a maximalist. What does that stuff mean to you? Because I'm wondering if there's more connection.
So I'm going to start with myself first, the maximalist. I believe it's mostly that I like to go to TJ Maxx when I'm stressed. But I didn't want to.
Me too. Me too. Right? Okay, cool. Keep going.
I didn't want to steal their term and get sued. So I used the correct term. But when I when I moved into this condo, I had 2 very separate ideas for my design style. Downstairs, my whole condo is open concept, and downstairs I have a magenta kitchen.
Nice.
And I have coral in my living area and a big teal wall that you see right as you walk in the front door. And I thought all I've wanted in my life is to live in a very bohemian bazaar. I wanted pillows covering the floor. I wanted lush colors. I wanted knickknacks from all over the world and different flea markets that I've been to. And I wanted it to basically be like if you walked onto the set of Aladdin and they tried to do like a bazaar.
I love that. That's literally what my backyard is. I just like, how can I feel like I'm kind of on an LSD trip back here? And that's what I did.
You'll have to send me a picture. I'm interested. And then for my bathroom and my bedroom, I did it over the shelter in place and that first Thanksgiving in COVID. And I did it as like a mermaid lagoon style. So it's teals and rich blues. And I took some tips from Kelsey on how to like make zones in my house. So my bedroom wasn't just
feng shui.
Yeah, put together and like thrown apart. And when I think about my maximalist lifestyle in the positive light, it's like very lush and it's like you're surrounded by things that inspire you. However, it also gets me into this place where I'm like, this is the nice way that I tell myself that I am 3 steps from hoarding because maximalist also means to me that, like my grandma Peg, I cannot pass up a deal. If it's a BOGO, that's a deal. If it's on clearance, then you're never going to get it at a better price than that. And you've got to get it. And like, even you talked really great about Marie Kondo. That's not how you say her name. I know, but Miss Kondo.
Yeah.
And how there's supposed to be intention to everything that you bring into your home. And sometimes what I get caught up in is my intention is I needed to feel a thing for a moment. And then when I think about minimalism, I think about the fact that I probably wouldn't be able to pull it off because I'm such a pack rat and I'm not very tidy. Like if I had unlimited funds, someone would be in this house doing all the deep cleaning that I force myself to do.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is interesting because I think there's a lot of misconceptions about what minimalism is or what it can look like.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you were talking about the fact that you had this vision for your home and all these different areas, like want it to really feel like Aladdin is out here, right? And there's mermaids over here, right? That to me is very minimalistic. That is a very specific kind of vision that you're bringing to life that makes you feel a lot of joy, a lot of happiness, right? And then you did it. Mm-hmm. Now, where it can kind of go awry, which we were talking about, is sometimes accumulating things or mm-hmm. jobs or people or anything that makes you not feel so good. And then not kind of going back to that intentionality of, okay, I've let some other things in here because that's life. It's not perfect. How can I get back to what my original vision of this space was? And what needs to go? What needs to stay? What needs a little upgrade? Or do I have a new vision now? Do I need mm-hmm. to kind of shift my intention with this area? And we're just talking about stuff right now. But of course, it's much more than that. And how can I kind of bring that to life? So I think, minimalism looks different to everybody. And, just for example, I've used this example before, but if somebody is a ballet dancer, right, they might have 150 pairs of different ballet shoes because that is like their number one passion. They dance every day. They want to wear a different shoe, whatever it is. They have different shoes for different competitions. That's cool. That person can still be a minimalist and have 150 pairs of ballet shoes. It's what brings them joy. It makes sense for them to have that. Now, if I had 150 pair, of ballet shoes, would not make sense. I don't do ballet. I don't have anywhere. It wouldn't make sense to have those in my closet. Mm-hmm. To me, that wouldn't be very minimalistic. Those shoes could be going to people who really love them and need them and use them all the time. And for me, they would just be collecting dust for no reason. Yeah. So I think we have to kind of get out of the space of minimalism equals how much stuff that you own or how much stuff that you don't own, and really get into the space of what do you fucking love? Oh, can I swear?
Yes. We mark it as explicit because I swear.
Okay, good. I always have to catch myself and I forget to ask before I'm on somebody's podcast and then it'll come up. But yeah, what lights you the fuck up and what doesn't? It's mm-hmm. as simple as that. You can own as much shit as you want, right? And that could be you backpacking with 10 things and it could be a house full of thousands of things.
So now you've hit on one of my relationship patterns where I'm so easily excitable
okay.
that it is easy to light me up. And therefore, another part of the, oh my gosh, how would I train the other people in my life about, I don't want a lot of stuff in my house that I didn't intend to be in this house, is my love language is receiving gifts. And people really like buying me things because I'll have an out of this world goofball reaction, like Oscar worthy performance about something that you found at Five Below and you thought that I really needed at the moment.
Sure. Okay. So, really great question. One thing that you said that I want to touch on is, how do I train everybody else around me? You can't.
Yeah.
You cannot control what anybody else gives to you or wants for you or anything. You can control what you do and what you do with that thing and how you communicate your needs and wants. But that's pretty much it. And there's going to be a big shift when you start doing that. It's uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
It's really uncomfortable when people are used to doing something specific for you, and then you start saying, I'm really trying to do this now, and giving them the solution to that, not just saying no thanks, but this is really what I'm looking for in my home, in my life, and whatever. And do you agree or disagree that gifts are more than just physical items?
I do. I've been trying to, with Christmas, we've kind of pivoted our family Christmas to where we always go, not always, we've done it twice, but we've started this tradition where we find out what Broadway production is going to be at Chicago.
Oh, how cool.
And we make sure that we have tickets for that.
That's amazing.
My sister also asked for a watercolor class this year.
Love it.
I asked for a rock tumbler because I'm obsessed with crystals and rocks now. It's my new hyper focus. So we're trying to be more intentional about the things that it's like, this is something that I could use and it could actually better my life. Or it's an experience with a memory that I can carry into what we're doing.
Exactly. When you really think about, the things that have been the most important to you and how can that be replicated? Like what kind of gifts can come out of that? Experiences with your friends and family. I bet you would get just excited as instead of like a friend surprising you with something from Five Below, they say, hey, here's tickets to your favorite musician. Mm-hmm. Here's tickets to, or here, I'm taking you to a restaurant that we're trying. I'm sure you would have that same excitable reaction. I could be wrong. Yeah. But I think there's more than stuff that probably you get excited about. And so it could just be shifting that. And here's the thing, you still get stuff and get excited about it. And I mean, I still want stuff and need stuff. It's not like my need or desire for that has gone away. I just have a kind of a mix of more things now. The things that are on, like, let's say if I have a wish list for Christmas, they're going to be very intentional items that we need for the home. And then they're going to be experiences that we love together, the grocery stores we like to shop at, that kind of stuff. It's just kind of an array of things versus no communication about it, just, only saying stuff and then being overwhelmed by all the stuff that we might receive.
Yeah. One of the things that also blocks me is that I enjoy hobbies and I enjoy trying all of the hobbies. Yeah. So right now I am sitting in my artist loft and one of my favorite artistic expressions is collage. And because anything can be a collage element, I'm saving makeup boxes that are pretty, like anything. I'm like, I can cut that up, throw it on a canvas, and then it's art. So it's also kind of that where it's like, I find myself holding on to things and waiting for their next purpose.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think, okay, so with that stuff, because I am similarly, I've always had a lot of interests. And what I used to do is when I got like a wild hair at my ass to do this new thing, right? I would go hard. I would get all the supplies, all the things, everything, do it for a week, and then I'd get tired and I'd have to put it somewhere and move on to the next thing. So if they're talking about ADHD tendencies, I got those. And so when now I've kind of trained myself like, okay, this could be a little bit of a whim. You might get tired in a few weeks. how can you do something kind of more small with it and
Mm-hmm.
more of like a sample, right? Of like,
Yeah.
instead of buying, 35 scrapbooks and all the things, what if you bought one and your favorite things that you could put in it, and
Mm-hmm.
you just did that first before checking in with yourself to see if this is something that you want to continue, to collect, whatever that might be. So it's also kind of like training how you manage those ideas, I think can be very helpful when it comes to overwhelm when you have a
One
lot
of
of
the one of the ways that I knew that I was starting to become a grown up who could manage themselves is a friend gave me a $30 coupon to Michael's, and I went, "Oh, I am going to go heal myself at Michael's." And I was walking around Michael's and I was like, well, I have watercolors and I have acrylics and I'm set on easels and I buy brushes all the time and I could just really clean brushes instead of just buying brushes. And instead, I settled on a really great wheeled cart. I already have one. Now I have two that I can keep all of my art stuff in. So it is more
Yes.
aesthetically pleasing and I can actually find it and see it,
Yes.
because talking about ADHD tendencies, if I can't see it, I don't actually believe it's in my home anymore.
Right.
So that gets me really caught up with my hobbies too. When you're trying to conceptualize what you already have in your house that you could use for this hobby.
Right.
So I'm
Right.
now on a whatever you're going to make for people for Christmas and it's going to be crocheted, you have to use the yarn that you already have at home and they will like the colors or they won't tell you that they don't like the colors.
Right, right. And that's great. It sounds like you've already come up with guidelines for yourself. It's just
Yeah.
about like figuring out what works for you. If you go by like, this is the designated space for this thing, once it starts piling up, I have to make some decisions, and
Mm-hmm.
that's cool. Or, like you just kind of figure out what's going to work for you. But instead of feeling like, oh, I'm annoyed with myself that I have all these interests and I'm always shifting gears. What if it was a really positive thing? Like, I'm so
Yeah.
creative, I'm never going to run out of ideas. There's never going to be a shortage of cool things I could get at Michael's, right? And so that stuff is always going to be there. And what do you want to work on in this moment? And what can wait? What can you write down for later that you want to try at some point? And managing that, I think, is super helpful for overwhelm. And something that makes all of this easier is really knowing what is the ultimate goal that you have.
Mm-hmm.
What is the ultimate goal for your life? Because for me, when I think about my ultimate goal for my day-to-day is freedom. And so if anything feels like it's encroaching on that, it makes the decision very easy. If I've had something sitting in my closet that's kind of taking up space and it's making it hard to get to things that I need and I want to use. And it's like, this has been here for 6 months. Do I feel like this is adding to my life? Do I think it's taking away valuable time or energy? And it's time to make a decision. When I think about what's my ultimate goal, ease, freedom, a lot of joy, it's really easy to kind of move that or get rid of it or whatever needs to happen.
Do you,
So yeah.
do you feel like in American capitalistic society, it's very easy to tell or comfortable to tell people that you live a minimalistic lifestyle?
No, it's hard.
No.
It's very hard, right? And it's so interesting. I used to try to explain it and now I just don't even bring it up. I communicate it in different ways. Of course, if people listen to Self-Helpless, they know and
Yeah.
all that stuff. But if somebody's asking us what we might want for our wedding or Christmas or something, we just say, oh God, we love Trader Joe's. Maybe a Trader Joe's gift card would be great, right? We don't even say like, okay, so I'm a minimalist, so I would really not like a lot of clutter, right?
Right.
Like we just say the things that we want. We love date night over here. We really need a new spatula, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And that becomes the focus. The focus is not on don't get X, Y, and Z, but like here are the things that really we would love to like enjoy together. And so the conversation doesn't even need to be brought up because it's a very personal kind of
Yeah.
thing. It did have to be brought up like with family because there was a very clear shift on people who have known me my whole life. And then I kind of just started asking for different things or communicating things, or somebody would gift me something and then they would notice I do not have it anymore because I donated it or something like
Mm-hmm.
that. And those brought up questions and conversations that could be tough. But other than that, I'm going probably close to a decade of living this lifestyle. So the
Yeah.
people around me are very like comfortable and familiar with what it is. And now they just crack jokes about it. We laugh together. But yeah, in the beginning, it's really, it can be uncomfortable for sure.
Yeah, I'm now picturing all of the things that I have in my house because they are something that someone gave me. And what if they came over and noticed it was gone? Like people are just taking inventories of your house while they're here.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of like a nightmare when you think of it that way.
Minimalism when it comes to the relationships in your life. I think it is so great that I'm talking to you this week because today I released an episode about what it's like to relate to people that you knew before the shelter in place. Now that you are a person who spent so much time alone with yourself and have kind of reconfigured your belief systems or your boundaries or things like that. So could you talk a little bit about what it kind of means to be a person who is socially minimalistic?
Totally. I mean, for me, it's the same kind of definition. If spending time with somebody is draining you, or it feels like it's a negative experience continuously, like there's a pattern, then that's something to look at, right? Does a conversation need to be had? Do you need to leave the relationship, whatever that might look like? And so for me, it's like, I don't want to spend time with people who it doesn't feel like a great time. And this doesn't mean like you got to be happy and toxic positivity all the time. Of course not. But when there's a very clear pattern of somebody, maybe there's some controlling behavior, some demanding behavior, and you just feel like the life has been sucked out of you, versus when you leave a conversation with somebody or an experience with somebody and you feel like content and peaceful and fulfilled, like you had a great time. That is minimalism, really weighing those options of what would it look like to just spend time with the people that I want to spend time with, and stop spending time with people that I don't want to spend time with. That is by far probably the hardest thing when it comes to this type of mindfulness practice to take action on, depending on what that relationship is and who it's with. But I used to be somebody who I went to a lot of parties. I dated a lot of people. I was around a lot of people, big groups, whoever, all the time. I didn't really care who I was around. I would just go and off and yes.
Yeah. One of the themes of the podcast is kind of talking about how either the culture we grew up in or the family that we grew up in or the surroundings that we grew up in have conditioned us to be people who tolerate things that maybe we don't actually know we're tolerating. And before the shelter in place, I was scared shitless of spending time by myself in this house a lot, because then you have to sit here and you have to think about like, well, do people still like me? Are people talking about me? Am I the clown of the group again? And things like that. And then I spent all of this time with myself and I made my house super fun to be at. And I got myself all these solo hobbies. And now I'm just like, if it's not a gut hell yes when you text me to be like, hey, do you want to come over tonight? Then I'm like, no.
Yeah. And that's okay.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, why are we pressuring ourselves to do things that we don't want to do with people we don't want to hang out with? Like,
I know.
right? We don't need to be doing that.
And it's kind of a Midwest mindset, but it's like, I was reading a chapter of The Artist's Way last night and she was going like, well, stop being so fucking nice. Like, because you think that niceness is what's going to get you so far in this world, but it's really leaching out all of the energy you could be using to create, to further yourself, to take care of yourself. And it's where resentment builds. And I'm like, oh, fuck, I've resented a lot of people just because I felt like their presence in my life was robbing me of a better experience in my life.
Right. Oh my gosh. Yes. I really try hard to decipher when I'm doing something because I want to, or whether I'm doing something because I feel pressured to by obligation.
Mm-hmm.
And what would it look like to not do that thing that people expect of me or society expects of me because I just don't want to. It doesn't feel good to me. What does that look like? Again, it can be uncomfortable to make those decisions, but that's really what we're talking about here, is like not letting these external pressures of whether it's people around you or society or whatever's been normalized that doesn't feel good to you, saying no when everybody else around you is saying yes. And how do you do that? And how do you cope with the uncomfortability of it? But the joy that you get and the alignment that you get in your life from that, to me, is so by far worth it. That little uncomfortability to have that conversation or deal with those feelings for what you get after that or long term in your life because of that decision is huge.
Yeah, one of my kind of red flags, now that I'm more comfortable with setting boundaries in my relationships and my friendships, is if I get pushback when I say no, or if I get pushback because I don't want to do something. And then it's like, because when I grew up, that was a big thing that would happen. You would assert a boundary and then someone would be like, are you sure? Or don't you know how that boundary makes me feel? Or something along those terms. So now, instead of drawing myself to those people and being like, oh yeah, that's what love is, like it's all ups and downs and like asserting yourself into making people believe that they care about you or whatnot. Now I'm like, oh no, that's a red flag. I've been through that unhealthy pattern before.
Totally. That's the thing, is like, yeah, when you say, hey, this is what I really need to take care of myself, and then somebody basically says, no, that doesn't work for me. That's saying, I don't care about you. I don't care about your well-being. I know that's that they're not saying those words, but that is what that means. And so for me, I think, yeah, somebody telling me that they love me or care about me, they care about me is just not enough. What are the actions showing? And I know that for me, like I still love people that are no longer in my life anymore, and I want the best for them, but loving them and wanting the best for them and hoping that they find all the happiness that they want doesn't mean I need to be in their day-to-day life. It doesn't mean that I have to be a part of it. It doesn't mean that I have to be in contact with them or put myself in positions that don't work for me, but I can still love them and appreciate them and what, the time we had together from afar.
Yeah.
And that is okay. I don't need to keep everybody around because I love them.
One of my sage Natalie wisdom pearls is I'll tell people, I'll be like, well, you can empathize, but you don't have to be involved.
Right.
And they'll look at me and I'm like, yeah, you can empathize and be like, oh yeah, I really understand what that person is going through, but you don't have to fix it. And you don't have to be the person they talk to about it. And you don't really have to be there. Right. You can just say, oh yeah, that's tough, and then move on.
Exactly. I love that. It's like, hey, that must be a really hard situation, and I have so much empathy for what that person might be going through. It's also not my job or responsibility to do anything about it or fix it.
Yeah. Would you talk to me a little bit about how your choice to step away from social media and the way that you run your business is a way that reflects your minimalistic lifestyle?
Ooh, good question. So, I think it's been about 10 years where I first started this like practice, of minimalism and that process. It started with my physical stuff, and then it just transferred into everything else, because I think once you train your brain to look for certain things, it kind of just becomes second nature. So me leaving social media was one of many decisions I've made over the course of almost a decade that just felt right to me, even though it's not the norm. There was pushback, there was questions, or people putting a lot of fear onto me that it's not going to work, my business is going to crumble, whatever it is going to be. So that was something where I'm in the habit of consistently reevaluating what's working for me and what's not working for me, what's necessary to reach my business goals and what isn't necessary, what's fun and what's not fun. So social media is one of those things that I knew was not something I really enjoyed spending a lot of time and energy on. And especially when my business model really shifted, and I knew that it wasn't totally necessary to keep it around. So when I knew it wasn't necessary and it didn't bring me joy, it was time to figure out how to leave.
Yeah.
And it was about a year of a process to slowly leave every app. And this is something, look, this was a hard thing to do. I had a decent amount of followers. I was making money with social media. I was getting my favorite products, and, you know, like I was doing all kinds of stuff with social media. It wasn't something that it was like I had 2 followers and I'd post a picture of my dog once a year. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I want to share like that there was some stakes involved, and that's why it was really scary to leave. It was something that I was making money in my business with, and I still needed and wanted to leave anyway. So that's how I felt about most decisions in my life. Like, hey, it's not that this isn't working or it's not bringing some kind of result. It just doesn't feel good internally. And I feel like it can be even harder to do that sometimes, because you feel like you're going to be missing out on something. You feel like you're making the wrong decision, where if something's not working very well and you hate it, it's kind of like, oh, okay, cool. No big deal. Let's move on to something else. But when it objectively looks like it's working, that decision, when it's just all on you and there's nobody to like, oh, it didn't work, or there's nothing else to kind of blame. It's a weird experience. Yeah. So that was part of it. It was just one of many decisions I had made.
Yeah. And I mean, I love social media. It's how we connected.
That's great. Yeah, it's great.
I love it. I love feeling like I have a million friends that are far away that aren't used to your day-to-day shit, so you can tell them things. And so when I think about leaving social media, it's a little bit of I do have an extreme case, in all cases, of fear of missing out. So that FOMO component, and I think that capitalism has bred us to be a little FOMO-y. I know that plays into things like spending to cope and having this house filled of things that I needed in the moment, but I don't know if I needed them forever, and things like that. It is just one of those things where you'll sit and you'll see someone's post on social media, and I've quieted that voice, but every once in a while I'm like, well, no one thought that I was fun enough to go to that, or something like that.
Right. Yeah. It can be tough, that comparison trap, or seeing things that you didn't even think would trigger you, and then it does. And I think it's just about really, again, being very mindful about when you're on there. Are you feeling like this is really fun? I'm really enjoying this. Or are you feeling like I feel like shit? Right. And maybe it's a mix of both, but if there's a pattern of like, when you leave social media, when you're on it, like, that was really fun. That was really fun. Awesome. It brings you joy. It adds value to your life. If you are noticing a pattern where you're on it and you leave it continuously and you're feeling like, I'm anxious, I don't feel good, my energy is shot, then it's something to think about why that might be happening. Is it social media? Is it the way that you're using it? Is there another solution? But yeah, another thing people kind of are assuming now is that not that you are, but I've gotten like, oh, you hate social media, or I'm very anti-social media. And I'm absolutely not. I'm anti doing shit you don't like doing. That's what I'm anti. And I think social media is an incredibly powerful tool. I greatly benefited from it. There's nothing inherently wrong with it. It's just, we have been told it's a necessity in business. And I'm just trying to say, look, it's not a necessity, it's an option. And if you are really struggling with it, you don't have to be on it. And that's all I'm saying. There's options for you, and they don't want you to know that.
Yeah. Can I use your husband's name?
Sometimes go for it. Yeah.
All right. I am currently making an assumption about you and Cam, and I have to believe that the two of you have a relationship that I've never experienced that has excellent communication, because I feel like that would have to play a part in a minimalistic marriage or relationship or something like that.
Sure. Well, what's so interesting is that I had a string of very unsuccessful relationships, and this was when I was also doing stand-up. So I just wasn't in one place for very long. A lot of casual things, a lot of flings, a lot of one-night stands. And at some point, that was so fun. Like that, that's exactly what I wanted for that period of time. At some point, after one of those like kind of flings, I was like, this is not feeling good anymore. I don't know what has shifted, but I don't want this anymore. So I consciously made a decision to put myself in a position to meet somebody in a more serious way. And I stopped. And then I was also not happy with my career in entertainment. And so I was like, how could I be in one space? Like, how could I have like a more of a home base and spend more time there? And how could I start getting involved in activities that just make me feel good, that make me feel like I have a foundation? And that's how I met Cam. So even that intentional shift of, I'm doing this for me. And it's not like I'm doing this only to meet somebody, but I'm doing this to kind of attract the lifestyle that I want and the person that I want. And the first thing I did was signing up for my company's softball team. Cause I'm like, what is more like consistent than something like that, where every Wednesday you are going to do something that is not work related. You're meeting people who have more of a conventional kind of lifestyle, which is always kind of what I wanted, even though I was really going against that. And that's where I met Cam. I met him on the softball team. So, and that's where we spent time together. And from there, it just, obviously relationships take work, but I intentionally wanted somebody with those same wants and values and all of that. And so I wouldn't have continued dating Cam if it was something that I was experiencing beforehand.
Yeah. He's a good one. I'm convinced
he really
of it.
is. He really is a good one. I mean, we've been together, I think 5.5 years, going on 6 years. And it's unlike other relationships I've been in. There's a clear difference with Cam.
One time on social media, he talked about you in a certain way that was mind-blowing to me, because I was like, no man has ever talked to me about me that way.
What was it? I wonder.
He was standing up to you about something, standing up for you about something about social media or something.
Yeah.
And I found it and I wrote him like this 2-paragraph, like probably inappropriate message. I was like, you're a good one, Cam. And if Delanie's sad, you tell her that I'm here for her and things like that.
That's so sweet.
And he's a good one. He's a good one. I cannot wait to listen to the latest episode where he's on it, because I've always wanted to know more about Cam.
Yeah. It just came out, I think Tuesday. So it's available. Yeah. We answer a lot of questions on there that were really good questions from, our community submitting questions. But we've grown really well together. There was some clear differences. Luckily they add, to our relationship, and we've just kind of problem solved for the rest of it,
Was he on board with minimalistic living? Or
yeah, you know what, he kind of considers himself like, he's like, I didn't really know this was a thing, but I guess I kind of just do this naturally, where he just not like a big on accumulating a lot of stuff and everything like that. And Cam is he's a very honest, blunt person. Like, where you stand with him at all times. And he is that type of person who's like, if I don't want to go do that, I'm not going. Like, he has always been like that. If I don't want to spend time with that person, I'm not saying yes to going out with them. Or where I've had a lot more of a struggle, I think, as a woman too, of feeling like I got to people please.
Yes.
So he is very much about like, he just wants to have fun as much as possible. So I think we were on the same page with that.
Awesome. So one way that you did help me be a little bit more minimalistic is my expectations that I have about myself on the day-to-day. So when I write my morning pages in the morning, I love to already spend those 20 minutes stressing myself out with all of the things that I could or should be doing.
Oh, yeah.
So one of your methods that I tried was, you had mentioned on an episode of Self-Helpless that you just gave yourself like a dot on your planner every time you did something nice for yourself.
Yes.
And I was like, a dot? I was like, I don't have to buy stickers. I don't have to write it down. I don't have to make it a moment. I get to just go, you took care of yourself, and I dot.
Exactly.
I am a person who loves to have rules and structure. So the dots weren't like, I kept on going, well, is that really taking care of yourself? Did you really feel good? And then I would overthink it and walk away from the calendar.
Right.
Yeah. So what I devised instead is I bought a planner that has a month calendar and it breaks it up by the weeks. Yes. And every week I write down the same 6 things. I must work out, meditate, create a chore, socialize, or read. And the day cannot be done until I do 3 of them.
Oh, I love that. That's great. And has that felt really good?
It has felt really good. I do have anxiety. So every once in a while, I'll say something like, well, for the artist way, I read, but I also had to do that prompt that was a lot like shadow work. So is that meditation? And then I get caught up in the mitigation of it all.
Oh, very interesting. So it's still feeling maybe a little bit overcomplicated, or
Right.
you're in your head about it.
Or I'm in my head. I'm always in my head. But it has helped me keep track of the things that I'm really prioritizing that week. It's like I recently returned to the gym after the holidays completely knocked me on my ass and I had just been making excuses not to go. And then when you have that like written in front of you as data, you're like, have you not gotten to the gym for 3 weeks? Your only goal was to go 2 or 3 times a week and you haven't gone at all. So,
okay. Yeah. I have found that because I used to really stress myself out with the whole morning routine shit. Oh my God. That used to make me feel like a total piece of shit, where it's like, oh, other people are waking up, they're doing yoga, they're having a green smoothie, they're meditating, they're going for a jog all before 8 a.m. I had to just completely let go of this idea of a morning routine or the perfect morning routine. And I just do like one thing. And I've stuck with that one thing that makes me feel good, which is literally just like drinking a smoothie that is good, or, a green juice or something where it feels like, okay, I did something nice for my body. And now I want to get into work, and that's okay. And then when I wrap up work, I do other nice things for myself. I might go on a walk or something, but I had to really let go of this idea of like, if I'm not doing 10 things before 8 a.m., I'm not taking care of myself, and it's not a priority. And I'm like, okay, where could I place the things that I like doing that make me feel good, that are taking care of my overall wellness, and what makes sense at what parts of the day? And that, oh my God, letting that go has been so helpful. And it's just allowed me to kind of just create my own daily or weekly routine that, there's things that make me feel good whenever the fuck I want to do them.
I had a conversation with a friend. He and I were doing our artist date together, and we had this poster board, and I was using oil pastels on one side and he was using oil pastels on the other, and we were co-creating this piece. And I was telling him, I was like, I'm really bad at recognizing when I'm relaxing. And he goes, well, what do you mean? I go, like right now. I go, we are relaxing. I am doing swirlies on a piece of like poster board, talking to a person that I care about. We're having a lovely Saturday. I go, but my mind will tell me, okay, but you didn't veg out in front of the TV for 2 hours and disassociate. Are you really relaxed? And I think that's what really, like, the complete peaks and valleys of what like counts for work and what is just you lazing about, or what is appropriate work or meaningful work compared to, well, what's relaxing and what's just you doing a thing. I think that's what the way that you talk about minimalism really inspires me to kind of open my boundaries of what things can be, because anything can be what you want it to be, and fuck everything else that you don't like about it.
Right. Exactly. Like, does it feel relaxing to you? Then it's relaxing.
Yeah.
Does it not feel relaxing? Then it's probably not, right? If you feel stressed out. And I just think, I mean, you brought up a great point of like, social media is where a lot of people compare themselves to other people, whether it's what they look like, their relationships, the social lives, the businesses, whatever. And it's just about letting all of that shit go, and not and just being the architect of your own day, and knowing what makes you feel good is going to be different to what makes somebody else feel good. And that's totally okay. It doesn't mean somebody's life is better than the other person's life, but I mean, what do you want to do? And who cares about what other people are doing, and who cares what they think about it? Which is of course easier said than done, but it's really just like, Yeah, you think it's weird that I'm doing all this stuff? I mean, people think what I have done is fucking bananas, right? Like I left a stable day job to paint penis cartoons on coffee mugs, right? I've decided I don't want children. I get a lot of pushback on that. I'm a minimalist. I have a minimalistic lifestyle. I'm a vegan. I get all those jokes too, right? Like I'm an entrepreneur. Everything that makes me happy has gone against the grain, not on purpose. It just happens to be the things that have made me happy don't seem to be the norm. But of course, there's plenty of things that make me happy that are the norm, like, maybe going to TJ Maxx yesterday, which I did with my husband, right? So there's like, hey, some things that bring you joy are really going to align with a lot of what other people are doing. Cool. And some things that bring you joy are not going to align with a lot of what other people are doing.
Yeah.
And doing it anyway is the hard part.
That's what makes you a badass.
I don't know. I mean, I try, but I'm more of a kind of behind the scenes badass now. And I think a lot of it is because of the visibility when you're doing that can be a little overwhelming and stressful.
But I think that's the most badass part of it, is that you can do it and be secure in yourself and have no one know about it.
Right.
Where I still feel like I am very much still doing things to either fill a hole in my heart or for the clout. Like, oh, look, I did it. Like,
oh, that's such good awareness though. One question I started asking myself, because first of all, when you start making these types of choices, it is hard to sometimes discern what you want and what you don't want, because you've been kind of conditioned to do things for other people a lot and all of that. And so it takes a lot of deep questioning. And one of the questions I would always ask myself is, if I couldn't post this on Instagram, would I do it? And that would tell me right away if I'm doing it just to share with people that I did it, and if I was doing it because I really wanted to. And that was one of the first questions I started asking myself to help me decipher what it is I really wanted. And then I think it just becomes a habit to where you don't really need to ask yourself a lot of those questions. You just kind of know a lot quicker.
So back to the theme of the podcast.
Yes.
Either before the minimalistic times or now, have you had to tolerate any ideals that are more male-centric, the patriarchy, or anything like that?
Oh God, yes. I mean, I feel like I have yet to meet a woman who hasn't been made to feel small or who hasn't been violated in some way, shape, or form. In that sense. My background is in the entertainment industry. You can imagine what kind of insanity happened there. But one thing I think it's important for all of us to be aware of too, is that we have been conditioned to criticize each other. Women have been conditioned to dislike and criticize other women. And that is something I feel is more prominent to what I'm experiencing right now, which is interesting. And it's not us actually wanting to attack each other. But again, those patriarchal things come in and we kind of zero in and become the targets for each other. So I would say the most relevant thing as we're talking about this is, that now that Cam and I are married, first question on everybody's mind is, when are you having kids, right? When are you having kids? There's an assumption that we want them, that we can have them, and that, it's expected. Yeah. So when we are saying, oh, we've actually decided not to have kids, the shock and horror on most people's faces by women. The dudes, I feel like there's a lot of men like, oh, cool. But I'm surprised that, the women are the ones who are really upset by it with me. And of course, that could be, look, if you are born female and you carry a child, you're probably more connected to that experience. There's something else going on. And I completely respect that experience is super meaningful for you and you want somebody else to experience that. But that has been interesting to witness right now, is that women are really questioning other women's decisions when we should be respecting each other's decisions, because first of all, it's revolutionary that we even have the fucking choice and we have the option. So if you want to have one, that should be celebrated because you're doing something that you want.
Yeah.
And if you don't want to have one, that should be celebrated because you're doing something that you want. And so right now, that is kind of what I'm dealing with when I share with people. A lot of people just putting a lot of fear into me about not having them. And that's been something I've noticed a lot. And another thing I've been noticing a lot the last few years, especially, is that people criticizing the way women spend their own money really
yes
yeah that
I have a great story. My cousin was on his second marriage, and his wife had long, beautiful blonde hair. She was always also very much younger than him. And she told my mom, well, you know, he won't let me get my hair cut because he loves it long. And my mom posted up, and I was a kid. She posted up and she's like, I'll fucking take you to the salon right now and we'll shave it fucking bald if that's how he feels. And then she yelled at my cousin. She's like, you don't get to fucking tell her what she does with her goddamn hair or whatever. Yeah. So I have carried that nonsense into my soul, where it's like, you don't get to tell me what I do with my purse. Right. I pay my bills. Right.
Exactly. When I see that, it really bothers me. Like I have to say something. I'm not like rude about it, but maybe it's asking a question, or maybe just saying, hey, it's her money. Who cares? Right? Like just, but the things that we criticize women for, like, you go to Starbucks every day. Do you know how much money that is per month? And wow, that's really frivolous and ridiculous. Would you say that to a man who says they like going to Starbucks every day? I know that for me, and here's the thing, I have been part of the problem before I was aware of this, right? Like we are made to, we make women feel like they are irresponsible with money, that they're frivolous and all this stuff. And I started noticing that. And I asked a question like, hey, if you found out that her husband did this, would you be saying the same stuff? Right? Would you be saying that? Or would you say, wow, good for you? Right? Good for you. You have a routine that you like. You treat yourself every day. Oh, it's so nice to see a man treating himself like that. We wouldn't say, oh, wow, that's really ridiculous and irresponsible, and you should probably rethink that. So that's been something very interesting. I've also received it as well, of course, as a woman, and the way that people talk to Cam and I about money is very different. We might spend the same amount of money on something, on different things, but me spending that amount is a very different feeling than him spending that amount on something. And that just pisses me off. There's no way around that.
The way that we talk to women about money is the way that we also talk to women about their spare time or their hobbies. And it's, well, isn't that nice? You went and saw a rom-com or something like that. Like the entire rest of the world was on fire for the 2 hours that you were in the movie, and you were just ignoring it or something.
Right. Oh my gosh, I was around somebody who was talking badly about somebody because this woman got a babysitter so she could go get her nails done for an hour to take a fucking break and treat herself. And they just thought that was so like ridiculous and selfish and irresponsible. And I was just like, sounds like you might want to get your nails done.
Yeah.
Are you feeling resentment because you're not taking time for yourself? Are you right? So it's like, it's hard for me not to say something. And it's not like I want to be combative, but I just want people to be aware that why are you saying this? And why are you saying this about this particular situation, but you're not saying about other situations?
Oh, yeah.
And maybe sometimes it's just deflecting like, hey, let the lady get her nails done. Who the fuck cares? Does this infringe on your rights as a person?
Right.
And sometimes it's like, hey, let's be aware of what we're doing.
No one's tracking what her husband is doing on a Saturday. Where's that kid's dad? Where's that kid's dad?
Exactly. Nobody cares. Yeah.
We released an episode with two of my best friends who are mothers about mommy culture and the way that kind of affects how we treat and talk to women. We have yet to release it, but I've recorded it, an episode with a woman who is a child-free coach. She coaches women on how to be assertive in being child-free,
Oh,
Isabel.
cool.
And we talked about our decisions to be child-free and things like that, because it's also a choice that I've made.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Child-free coach. That's freaking awesome. So
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard when you feel like it's you against the world on a
Mhm.
topic. And then it's really hard when you feel like it's you against the world on several topics of your
Right.
life, right? I mean, I've been very open on a Self-Helpless podcast, especially of like, I know that me going to a party where there's a lot of people I don't know, it might be a very different experience than maybe Cam going to a party or
Yeah.
whatever. It's like most topics that get brought up, and if I'm sharing about it openly, if I'm being asked a question, it's going to raise some kind of weird resistance in somebody or
Mhm.
kind of interrogation. And sometimes I just don't feel like doing that.
Yeah.
Sometimes I just don't feel like spending my time going to a party and being questioned about all of the choices I've made that make me happy. And it doesn't happen all the time, but it happens enough to know I have to kind of mentally prepare when I'm going into a situation like that. Oh, like any question. I mean,
Yeah.
you think about it, it's going to kind of come to that topic, one of those topics. And then I feel like I'm having to defend my choice when I didn't even bring up the fucking question.
Right. I was just being in the space. Like I was
just
invited to
Hey,
this party, and now I'm being
just-
attacked for being here.
just
So
trying to eat my sandwich and sit in the sun. But
it's
hey,
just,
all right, we want to talk about this? Okay.
yeah.
So that it breaks my heart when I see women doing it to each other more than I
Yeah.
see when men do it. Because I'm like, wow, it's really sunk into all of us to attack us
Yeah.
instead of, hey, all right, a dude said something shitty. We can be there for each other. But when other women are not able to be there for each other, that's what really bums me out. And that's what I've noticed a lot of now. That I don't know, maybe it's people, I don't know. I just feel like the choices I've made has kind of led me to looking at that a little bit differently.
All right. Well, we have two traditions on To All the Men I've Tolerated Before that we use to wrap up the episodes.
Awesome.
We do our biggest growth moment from either the conversation or your minimalistic lifestyle. And then we manifest so that someone else in the collective energy might one day have it easier than what we had to grow through.
Oh, nice. I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So first question is growth moment.
Biggest takeaway or growth moment from minimalism.
So I think what I would love for people to take away from this is just remove the things that aren't feeling good to you so you can focus on what does feel good. And that could be anything: stuff, people, jobs, activities, situations, books. I mean, whatever that means to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think my biggest takeaway, and sometimes this is always the biggest takeaway, I have to start giving myself more credit because I have all of these things that I've written in my head about myself or had written for me. And then it's like, well, sometimes I'm very mindful about the stuff in my house, and I need to always be reaching out to people who know just a little bit more than me so that I can rewrite my narrative on the world and where I'm actually at in the world. And I'm also this weekend going to go through this loft and organize it and start being more of a tidy person.
I love it. That's great. I mean, from when we have talked, I feel like you are full of self-awareness. So if you've been beating yourself up about that, I would say like you're very aware. Hey, you're doing this podcast. This is something that takes a lot of time and energy, and you're putting a lot of love into it, and you're doing something that not everybody is doing, and it's bringing you joy. Like that's huge.
I will say that the feedback or the combativeness that you might get about minimalism or being a vegan or being child free, I share in the Midwest about being artistic. There are a lot of people here that don't really get why you would pour so much energy into creating.
Oh, wow. That's so interesting. See, that's something where, yeah, I'm in Los Angeles
Mhm.
area. So that is not something I have to deal with on a day to day. That's a really interesting perspective.
Yeah.
Wow.
So what would you like to manifest into the collective energy for everybody?
Oh my gosh. Oh boy. I mean, if I like to kind of give a practical step, maybe
Sure.
if I can really think of like the point where things shifted and then kind of created this snowball effect. I was in my bedroom just being very overwhelmed by my stuff.
Yeah.
And I just had this realization of, there's a lot I want to accomplish in my life, and this shit is getting in the way.
Yeah.
And that was really the moment that changed stuff. And all I did is I started with one section of my room of being mindful of what brings me joy and what doesn't, and going from there and letting it kind of transfer into every other area. And it was really hard because I didn't really know what I liked and didn't like, and I had to kind of discover that for myself. So that one step, what feels like the most accessible step? It might be your schedule, it might be your stuff, it might be a relationship. What feels like the easiest step for you to take in that direction, if this is something that's resonating with you, of course.
Yeah. I think my manifestation is also kind of my biggest lesson from you personally is I hope that someone listening takes the cue to have the freedom to own your shit and live your badassery. Because I mean, when you step down from social media, I remember writing you a gushy message like, I'm proud of you because it's another step that you took to be your truest, authentic self and fucking own your shit.
Yeah.
And I hope that everyone is in an environment where they can be their truest, authentic self and be the biggest fucking motherfucker that they want to be. And I know that I didn't always feel like I was in that environment. So I'm hoping that more people find the freedom to be their truest self.
Yes. Hey, freaking man. I love it. Yes, yes, yes.
All right. Now you get to brag. Because they can't find you on Instagram. So how are they going to find you so you can start helping them with their businesses and their dreams and minimalism?
Yes. So you can find everything at DelanieFischer.com. I do have a podcast, E-Ficionado, which is the Minimalist Business Podcast. So all these same principles applied to business, simplifying your business in order to have the freedom and the revenue that you want, and also reclaim your time. That's exactly what we do over there, but jam-packed with a lot of strategy and stuff behind it and logistics. So that's over there. You can also find Self-Helpless podcast on my website too, which is our comedic personal growth podcast where we discuss a variety of things. I also have a DIY PR package called E-Ficionado the Process that you can check that out on my website. It's all there. One location. Oh my God, Maverick is here the whole time. Did you see him?
Has he been here the whole time? I've never gotten to see Maverick
Oh my God,
before.
here he is. There he is.
Hi, Mav.
He sits in the corner of my chair for every call that I have, every podcast I do.
I kicked out Penelope, but she usually like makes herself sit on the arm of the chair and then she'll like play with the mouse and then I'm like, you have to go.
So cute. Oh gosh, they're the best. But yeah, DelanieFischer.com for all of the things, podcasts, business simplicity coaching services, all that good stuff can be found there.
All right. And then Tolerius, make sure to go check out Delanie because she's part of the reason why this podcast happened. And you can find us on Instagram at Men I've Tolerated Pod. There's a real simple link tree that gets you to everything else, including the access link to follow me on Fireside so you can start coming to the live Q&As that are happening bi-weekly.
Nice. Yay.
All right. Now for the tagline that I'm hoping to not fuck up. Tolerators, remember out there, you don't have to smile through anything you're tolerating, especially if you're at a party and someone asks you a personal question about yourself, you answer honestly, and then they become an asshole. Smiles are for joy.
Love it.